our ultimate 2025 Springbok team, every Sunday with Andre Pretorius.
How's it, everyone? Welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod, where I know you've all heard about Clippies and Coke. We have Andre's Clips. We could call them the Clippies. And we try to dive into each position of a mythical Springbok team. First of all, focusing on the actual Springbok team, the incumbent. Then we dive into second string and third string challengers, the successors, depending on whether someone's 33, 35, 36. And then we kind of visit a dark horse. Andre, good to see you again. And I'm hearing from the world out there that they're really enjoying your clips. How much time are you spending now finding these videos?
Hi, Harry. Good to be back. No, it's all good. Glad to hear that they're enjoying it. It does take a bit of time. Luckily, I think what's taking a bit of time is the fact that, and we spoke about it last week with Russi, is the fact that he's playing so many players in different positions. So you need to be ready for anything in that regard. And also, they've got so many highlights, these gents. So it's difficult to choose between the clips in terms of quality, because there's so many good quality clips, and also to find stuff to show what they need to work on. You really need to go and nitpick. And I sometimes feel bad to put in the clips where guys need to work on. But I think it's good technical stuff that we can get out there and to show that even at the highest level, a small thing can make a big difference.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually getting a good reception because of that. It's rigorous. The methodology is clear. Guys, we all know that there's more facets to each of these positions. So today we're going to talk about, the 5 lock, sort of a glamour position, really. And if we were slicing and dicing, we'd probably have, 50% for this and 35% for that and 21 and 2 and 3. But we've tried to make it a little bit simpler and always have basically 3 or 4 facets. And we even boiling it down to its essence because we're kind of making assumptions. Like, we assume anyone that's being talked about in these shows is amazing. Anyone that comes up in these shows, even if they're the worst ranked of the 4, has incredible desire, athleticism, skill, blah, blah, blah. So we're focusing more on, but if you didn't have something, if you lacked that, where would it be a problem? Where would you get dropped the next week? Where would you lose a match the All Blacks you should have won? And I think this is one of the prime positions for that. Talk to me a little bit about, the dangers of losing your lineout, because in lock 5, we're going to go, there's no avoiding it. We're talking about lineouts. What happens to a team when you cannot trust your lineout?
Well, it's your biggest source of possession because there are so many lineout events in the game. And if you're going to go down below 90% and you're just giving them more opportunities to attack from. And what I believe is every game starts with a 50-50. You'll have X amount of attacking opportunities and the opposition will have X amount of attacking opportunities. And how you go about your business will determine if yours increases and if theirs decreases. If you don't get your set piece right, what you're doing is you're just putting more pressure onto your defense. Now, some teams don't mind that, but when you're putting your defense under pressure and you're conceding penalties, you're defending more into your red zone. And when you get those teams that are very, very efficient in the red zone, it means that you're conceding points at a regular basis, and then it's difficult to come back. So it's got such a snowball effect if your set piece doesn't work, and especially your lineout. I mean, we get some games where we've got 3 scrums in the whole game, but we've got 28 lineouts, and I'm not joking. We've had those. So if you can imagine, if you got 28 lineouts and you miss 60% or 40% of them, you only get 60% of it. It means that 40% of that goes to them. You now have to do turnover defense. Your kick space coverage is non-existent because you're in an attacking setup. So that it's just such a compound effect if that set piece doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. I've given coaches around the world, when I've started to work with the team, this sort of Hobson's choice. I give you 5 things you lose off the bat before the game. Which one did you not like the most? 5 charge downs against you, 5 line breaks against you, 5 stolen lineouts against you, 5 scrum penalties against you. And it's remarkable how many people go to the line out. And it's this. It's a lot of times your starter plays are constructed off your line out. It's almost like in a serve in tennis. It's the one shot where you get to decide everything about it. I want 2 lifters. I want 1 lifter. I want 2 towers. I want this movement before the ball's thrown. I want to have, Marcel Coetzee off the line out as the first strike runner, even the Roos, whatever. I want to construct my strike move. And most of the time when people get a penalty and they can go into the 22, they kick out the ball to get a line out, and that's where everything begins from. So when we get into Lock 5, we have to talk about lineouts, and let's just put another myth to rest. When lineouts go wrong, it's not always the lock's fault. It's not always the hooker's fault. And also, nothing in the law says that your 5 lock has to be the lineout captain, but it's almost always the case that the Lock 5 is. And instead of just being a lineout caller, a lot of teams are calling them the lineout captain. Why? Because you pick the call, you adjust the call, you can change the call by audible at, you can decide how many people, how many lifters, the movement before to create a pivot so that the defending team goes to the back wrongfully and misses the front. You've got to have the throw itself in timing with you, and maybe more importantly than anything else as a line-out lock, the actual leap, the jump, being easy to lift. And by that, it means, like Victor Matfield said, I always made sure I wasn't fat. I always made sure I was quick off the ground. I always sure that I had a really good communication with my props, and all those things come together. So before we go into our categories, what do you look for in Lock 5 that's special? Like, what are the things, like when you think of your Lock 5, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For me, it's always lineouts.
Well, it has to be Harry, and he needs to understand his roles. But if I think about the lock, he's the fly-off of the forwards. He's the 10 of the forwards with the, he's got a 10's brain, but he's got that bouncer's edge to him. But he understands your system. He's just such a chameleon when it comes to the specific roles that need to be performed, and that's why he's such an important cog in this system.
That's actually a great point about mauls. So the maul drive exists in rugby, and it doesn't have to go everywhere. Not every maul ends in a try. A lot of them get stopped. But you look at the great maul stopping teams, there's usually a 5 lock with super long arms who gets in a good position. Maybe he goes for the sack, maybe he doesn't, but he gets in a good position, he swims. And those guys are worth their weight in gold. We've talked about Rory Arnold, or maybe off the air. And a guy like that can literally just take on a maul by himself and render it useless. Actually turn it into a penalty machine the other way around. And so, there's a lot of things there that, and also we remiss of not including the restart. So a lot of times you put your 5 lock in the air to restart because he's the most reliable hands guy. So let's make it as a given that everyone we're going to talk about today has good hands, or they wouldn't be playing the position that they're playing. Also, going back in time on our 4 locks, just so the Springbok squad was announced, and sure enough, we nailed it. We have Eben, we have Argier, we have Salman, and we have Kobus Wiese, a dark horse. So we nailed it. So now we're going to go into the next territory and see how well we did. The categories we've established, just so everyone's clear, is the first one is 60%. So 3/5 of this guy's job is to manage the set piece. That's maul killing, maul establishing, that's line out calling, line out jumping, restarting, and all that's and scrummaging. All that's included in that game. No ifs, ands, and buts. No excuses. If you're not good at set piece, you're not starting as a Springbok Lock 5. The next category is ruck efficiency. We say ruck efficiency because we want to cover defensive and attacking rucks. A lot of times these guys are your first cleaner to a ruck, or they're the second. They're the cleanup man, the cleanup of the bad clean. And then finally, we've got to carry at 10%. So 60, 30, 10, different from most of our categories, just establishing how important it is at set piece.
Harry, just on that ruck efficiency, I think that it's part of that role understanding, because a lot of teams don't run with just numbers. They go about jumping pods, non-jumping pods. So you take the ball at the back, I'm non-jumping pod, so first ruck or first carry will be my carry. Or so the fact that ruck efficiency, it's problem solving. And now you walk in with a call. Let's say you're going with a walk-in speed call. This is what it's going to be. Everybody's got the call. They know it's a 5-man. It's a pivot going to the back. So the front two, you're going to be the first runners going around with the 12 or the 13 or whatever the case may be. Once you go in there, good systems, their lineouts work in a certain way. They walk in through the first door, walk-in speed call. Defense shows you something else. Now they've got the opportunity to walk through another door. They go cancel press or cancel spread. Going to them, that's the next door. They show them something different. They adjust to that. They go through the third door. And once all of that's happened, once the ball goes up, you need to understand what your role is in that system now and how it's changed from walking through the first door and then walking into door 3, 4, or 5, which a lot of good systems have 5 doors up until 6 probably. And that's how clever these boys have got to be in terms of their understanding of their roles and going into that next phase.
Yeah, exactly. I had a chat with a Bok hooker who will remain unnamed. I'm not sure you're supposed to tell me this, but he was saying the biggest difference between club and country was just the size of the book of the actual calls and the cancel, the audibles, the change at line out, and the ability to manage that, you know, and have almost telepathic connection with your line out captain. So without further ado, we're going to jump into discussing one of my favorite players, but been lost in the wilderness for a long time. And it's one of the great feel-good stories of 2025 so far, which is our friend, the great Lood de Jager, who is one of those guys that you can go back all the way to 2015 and look at the stats, because the Rugby World Cup has some of the best aligned statistics you can find. And you'll find the best gain line runner in the 2015 Rugby World Cup, you know, with plenty of sample size, Lood. And then you see so many places from 2015 to 2025, this 10-year span where he's been unlucky with injury. But when he's on the field, when he's on the pitch, that combination of him and Ibn, it's very difficult in world rugby to get a better one, because they basically cover each other's worst instincts and minor flaws. They cover each other almost perfectly. So let's take a look at Andre's clips and see what we can learn about Brother Lood.
Harry, just before we jump into that, I had the privilege of being in the same era that Lood was at the Northwest University. And obviously he's always been a tall guy and there was this big potential, but there was this feeling that Lood just didn't have the heart. You know, it was this big bear. And I think someone must have gotten to him and he just realized, I can do something with this body that's been given to me. And it just changed everything for him. I think he went to the Cheetahs after that, got signed by the Bulls. And I mean, obviously the rest is history. He's playing in Japan at the moment. We got a couple of clips of him playing in Japan. These Springbok clips are going back too far. So most of his clips are Japanese clips, but he's still Lood, and he's still, I mean, at 125 kgs, 206, that's a big unit. That's a big unit. Okay, so Harry, because lineout was so important to this rating system, I've included lineouts purely for the fact that this is their area of expertise, and we're going to have a look at delivery and contesting. Not too many clips of that, but you know, these guys have got some experience and they're really experts at their job. This is Lood, front ball, great delivery. In the middle, again, great delivery. And then even at the back. So as you can see, there's absolutely no problem line-out-wise when it comes to Lood. And like I said, at 206, he's probably your primary line-out jumper. When we get to the
I
defense,
like how he frames the catch too, Andre. He's both elbows out. He's got an A-frame of a house. Very difficult to pinch from him without infringing.
yes, and once there's pressure, he rips the ball away from that zone, which makes it easier to deliver as well. So it's a really good point you make there. The next one we look at is defense. And, you know, for a big man, he moves really well. And you'll see in this one, this is kick chase. It's a late step by the back. Lood gets close enough, and he actually makes a leg tackle. 206 making leg tackles. That's impressive, Harry. You know, I'm working with Rory Arnold at the moment, and if we get leg tackles there, it's probably more rare than a unicorn on this side of the on this side of the earth. So
that's a long way to get down from there, from Lood.
Exactly.
He's up in the clouds.
but what's impressive to me is the fact that Lood gets planted on this one, but because his read is so good, he never overtracks. He's always on the inside hip. And then from there, when he launches, look how close he gets. And that's from a kick chase. That's really difficult to do, especially for his size. On the next one, it's purely the space that he needs to cover. So obviously, Kubota on this one has made some yards on the edge. Lood's worked really hard to get into this first part of the defense. Let's call it power defense. Normally that 1 to 5 where pods run in. And if you look at the space that Lood's got around him, now any player would back himself going into some of that space. But have a look at how efficient he is at making that tackle. Again, a leg tackle. It's impressive, Harry. It's something that when I was going through the clips, it's something that I never picked up of Lood. I know he's a very physical player, but his leg chop technique is fantastic. So this is a bit different. The reason it's another South African, it's David Bulbring that. The reason I circled him is, so Lood's made the double hit now. He stays in front, but what a lot of the tacklers do at the moment is they get taken out by this guy. Let's call him the blast, the outside rucker. They get taken out by this guy so easily, and they make the yards. They never get back to the ball. But have a look at how Lood fights the blast. He stays in the tackle, but he also fights that blast. And while this is happening, Panasonic get to set and put their lines together. And I know David will probably be not be happy with that performance, but still, Lood leaning forward and staying in that fight, making it difficult for them to get him off that and make it an easy yard or two, free yard to get. His work rate is also very good. You see, kick through. There he is, disconnected line. He's trying to get connected to the backs, chasing up in front. And then dummy kick, gets through on the edge, and they get that ball back.
Creates a turnover, yeah.
And
that's
he creates a turnover.
That's just pure desire and work rate. There's nothing else.
Exactly. And the fact that he starts chasing, he can read it. He's not just a number in the line. He reads what's about to happen and then starts chasing and catching the wing on that side. And then just like Eben, he does tend to pressure. I don't think he's as clinical. You'll see, like we spoke with Eben, there's a set, there's a load and a jump. He's definitely set, but his length definitely helped him in this situation. And he creates this opportunity for them. Little chicken wing with no pressure, which of course you need in your life. But Harry, just going back to this, I had a chat to a lot of people after the last video, and they were talking about Frick de Preer and all of that. And I said, I understand, when Frick was or is, one of the best that we've ever had. The thing with the the modern day locks is that they've taken stuff like this and they've made it their own. Because they're so tall, we call it a spike, where you want to get on top of the 9 and put pressure. And they put themselves, they actually swap out positions to get close so that they can put 9s under pressure. I mean, it's a 206 versus a 175 or a 182 or whatever the case may be with centers next to the ruck. They swap positions to put pressure on that.
Yeah, and Frick would be a flank nowadays with his height.
So last week we spoke about Argier and the way that he plays that little ball out the back. Now, Lood has got a great skill set. He's got a fantastic skill set. And this was right on pace. You can see what he does to the 2 defenders in front of him. And then he plays that little ball out the back. See how they get blocked onto him? And this is what you're looking for. If this guy is committed to the ball carrier, it gets the following defender to be sluggish, and it preserves that space on the edge there.
Do you think that was a call? Did someone make that call to him behind?
Yeah, it would have been that captain of play. I think what would have been, they would have seen the short corner and the space on the edge there. And he was going to carry, but the thing with Lood is he's always giving you the option. Why? Because he's carrying with ball in 2 hands first.
Mm-hmm.
And when he made that call, and this call is best done when everybody's in motion and everybody's going to the line and you see the space, you see the short corner, and then you call it, and he's square, and they can put that ball into space. And there's big trouble for Kubota there. Now, Argier did this in his clips. Lood has got a great skill set when it comes to this. Here's another example. Now, in this one, I think that's a bit far. I think that's a bit far away. He doesn't get as much, and you can see that defender. You see the different picture?
Yeah.
How he gets off, which means that the next guy is off already. And like we showed, you want that next guy to be sluggish. He needs to sit down, and that gets. But I don't think this was the right call. If you look at where the corner is on the edge there, I don't think this was the right call, and that's probably the reason why the boys didn't react to it as they should have. So I'd like to talk about something that I think Lood, and it's more a mindset thing than anything else. It's his attacking breakdown work, and he's very, very clinical. He's methodical in his thoughts and his process, but it gets him into trouble sometimes, and it gives the jacklers an opportunity. So you'll see something very similar in every clip. He has a look at where the threat is, and he's got his arms up. Remember, we spoke about where's Mike Tyson? He's got his arms up. He's looking through the barrel. He wants to get rid of this guy. So it's very methodical. Great clean balls available. So no problems there. Ball into the edge. Again, you'll see exactly the same thing. Now, I like that because it's a process. That's obviously, he feels really compact. He feels strong. He goes into that system, and then he makes the clean. Now, where this gets you into trouble is when you're waiting. And it feels to me like when I look at the other locks, when it comes to attacking breakdown, Argier, Eben, Nortjé, Mostert, those boys, they kind of want to win the ruck in the air already. They don't want to give a jackler any sniff of it. And because I assume because Lood is so methodical, he sometimes lets them in. He's waiting for that target to take away and to clean away. And that's, in this situation, You don't want, if he was a better jackler, he beats Lood to the punch. Terrible, terrible technique there by the jackler.
Yeah, it
And
seems to me that when Lood gets in trouble, he's a giraffe at the waterhole, instead of coming in, like a bush pilot, taking off the plane. And I think
right.
what you're referring to there is that he gets in too much of a step. And so now I'm gathering my long legs under me, and then I'm going to do something instead of just blasting in like you've seen Archie do. And definitely Mostert. Mostert on every rug I've ever seen him, he comes in hot.
That's exactly the point, Harry. You're making a great point there. And if we look at the next one, it's the same thing. So we got a box kick from our blonde speedo friend Faf de Klerk, right? Lood does so well getting back into position. And then all I'm thinking is that if it was one of the other locks we've spoken about, I think they would have been shoulder on in there. It doesn't matter who you get on, either your own player or one of theirs, but he's on there and he's driving that thing. And see how he just waits there, and now he's lost that shoulder battle. The jackler's gotten in underneath him, and because he's a lot heavier, he moves him, but the jackler's gotten in on the ball. And the only thing that can stop that is by getting in right there and beating him to the punch, getting into that space there before the 7 gets in there. So that's something that I think Lood can be, and it's also that it's that aggressive mindset, a continuous mindset. Lood's very aggressive. He's very physical, but I think in situations he sometimes goes more effective than he does aggressive. And then just on ball carry, he's got a couple of different ways of carrying ball. There's that little tip line that he runs off into space. He can accelerate. It's a good tackle on him. What he does well, Harry, and it's probably the same as we've seen in that with the leg chops. He can close up the space really well. 206, tall guy. When he decides to carry, he gets onto the hips. He makes it a hip fight for them, and he's a lot stronger at that height than they are. And he keeps going. And then what he does is he also doesn't go down. When we look at one of the candidates or guys later on, when they hit, they go down immediately. He doesn't go down immediately. He focuses, he gets onto the hip, and then he keeps driving with the legs. You'll see his legs keep pumping. He's even put it down, and it keeps pumping. Again, on the edge of 10, look how he closes up that space. Works to fight that. And another thing I like about him is his ground skill. So he finds his chest, pushes the ball back away from the jackler, and ball's available. And he's got great feet. So finds the ball on the move out, steps off the right, and then closes up that space, finds his chest, ground skill, and ball's available. So he's a really good ball carrier. And he's got different ways of carrying.
Yeah, I love his ball carrying because he always seems to be going downhill. There's almost nothing you can do to not have him be that way. And the other thing is, I think he's a bit of awkwardness about him, but in a good way. I feel like people have a hard time putting a big hit on him. They think they're going to get one and then they don't.
Exactly. And Harry, I think that the difficult thing with him is his awareness of what he wants to do after. So if he decides that he needs to be placing the ball, he'll close it up. But in this clip, you'll see that he understands exactly what he wants to do. So he's carrying high for one reason. He wants that offload. He wants to get the offload. Now, if he was more conscious of his hand position like Ergier. When Ergier goes into the contact, he deliberately lifts his elbows up so that he can play. Lood unfortunately keeps the elbows in, so when he gets tackled, he gets kind of smothered and the ball gets pressed onto his body and he can't get rid of it. But look how he then works with his legs to then make as many yards as he can. But he was going to offload this, and the reason I know this is that he stayed upright. And in all the other clips, you could see that he went down, he knew he was going to run into a double hit. There was no offload opportunity. He stayed upright here. And I think that too did really well to wrap his arms around. But obviously, when you're going up top against that guy, you're going to give away a couple of yards. On the carry again, small step. And he likes this little step off the right foot. Moves in, just there. Gets onto a weak shoulder, gets in between them, finds his chest. Good ground skill, ball available. And then once he gets into a rhythm and he runs this line, he's a difficult man to stop. You know, and if you think about South Africa at the moment, if we get good go forward ball, if you've got Lood running off the 9, making good decisions there, that's probably the result we're going to see. And then just lastly, a bit of pressure, catches an intercept.
Go.
And
Oh, nice.
There's the giraffe running to water.
He's got good. He can motor, man.
Yeah, he can motor. And he's got a good dive. You know, some guys don't know how to score tries. So Lood has been busy in Japan, even through his injuries. He's been contributing and making a difference to the Panasonic Wild Knights in every game that he plays.
Some people will say that Lood has been against deficient opposition, and so try to mark him down. What I'd say to that is in the Japanese leagues, he's jumping against proper locks. I mean, it's not like the Japanese teams all have miniature locks. Most of them are foreign imports, and so he's got obviously a lineout's still a lineout. It's still difficult when you're up against another 2-meter guy and have to secure it. I don't think there's anything wrong with this set piece. You could say that maybe ruck efficiency could decline if you're not up against the best week in, week out. So that's fair enough. But in our rankings, we went across and gave him a 57 out of 60 for set piece. I love his work on the line out. That's outstanding. And so obviously, we're tough markers too. We're not giving easy grades here. Ruck efficiency is probably where he has the most work on, and sure enough, the clips bear that out. 26 out of 30. It's the gain line carry, 9 out of 10. And I'm more not watching them. I'm gonna give him a 10. He's just, to me, one of my favorite big ball carriers. He's got that incredible wingspan, but he uses it to good effect. His feet are good. Most guys at 206, they're not doing any kind of stepping. And then, of course, if he's at the 5-meter line, I think he can score from there just from a little bit of a shuffle and a reach.
Yes.
So he's definitely one that the Springboks have not had. They should have had. They wish they would have had. And we cannot even go back in time and wonder. I mean, obviously, Marks was out in 2023 for the World Cup, but what if Lood was in there with Marks? It could have been an amazing sweep. So yeah, we have him at 92, and that's a formidable score. Probably he would have had higher if we could benchmark it better, because we have to factor in where he's been playing versus Ruan Nortjé, for example, in the ERC. So well done, Lood. We really hope that Lood can come back in. We see that he's been named in the alignment camp and then the squad announcement as well.
Yeah, just to get back to that ball carry, I was very, very impressed with the stuff that I saw from him, and just because of his total variation that he has with his ball carry. He can step to the outside, he can step to the inside, mostly off the right foot. I would say that. So if, as a defense coach, if I had to, because he's one of your biggest carriers, so you would make individual plans for a player like that. So you would target that right foot, and you know where he's going on which side of the field. That's the only thing. But that clip that I showed, he didn't get the offload away, but the awareness for him not to close up there, he saw two smaller defenders. I think he needs to sit down and have a coffee with Erge, go through Erge's clips, because if Lood can get his elbows up over those small defenders or shorter defenders, especially in this league, he'll probably run away with the offload prize every single year. But he's an impressive specimen. And I think, like you said, the ruck efficiency is purely an awareness, and it's not waiting for trouble to happen. It's kind of having, sorting out the problem before it even happens.
Speaking of ruck efficiency, our next candidate is a guy that I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about, partly because he never talks. But Mostert is our man with the hair on fire. And one thing about him on ruck efficiency is I've never seen a guy want to ruck more, even with a broken leg. I think they had to pull him off in Durban against Ireland finally and said, man, you've got a broken leg. So this is a man who's got pain tolerance. Take us through some clips of Franco Mostert and what he does well in these categories.
Yeah, you've nailed it. That's his absolute strength. I think sometimes he puts himself into a rucking position instead of a ball carrying position. And I would put that down to understanding your strengths and putting better people into better positions, which, like you said, nobody has ever said a bad thing about Franco Mostert, and I understand why. So again, just on the lineouts. Now, I spoke about this last week on Erge. Great little one-handed delivery. I don't know which is better, the delivery or we'll play it in real time with Etzebeth catching this, but just he's very surprised with that little catch there. But great catch. Great delivery. No problems there for Franco. This was an interesting one. So you can see where the ball is in the air, Harry, and that he still has not been lifted or jumped. So obviously he's late. This was a late trigger. He got this call wrong, or not the call wrong. He got the triggers wrong, and he's late. But that still didn't stop him. Gets into position, little one-hand catch. And then you think that this is probably the pinnacle of this clip, but it isn't, because the Matera's on the move, which means that you want to put the ball in front of him. And if you can see the way that Mostert, because of the late lift and jump, is positioned, have a look at how he compensates and then puts the ball in front of Matera. That's a skillful player. And I think if you talk to people about Franco, skill's probably not the first thing that comes up when you talk about him. I think he's a very underrated rugby player, and he also understands the game. He's one of those guys at school that probably played rugby, cricket. When the badminton team needed a player, he probably did that as well. He's one of those, but you'd never say that of him.
Yeah.
And then contesting, not a problem. Now, I was thinking of how to show this because it's such fine margins. So let's see if we can show this, Harry. So on this is just before the Toyota team decides where they want to throw. And you can see if you can see that Sous knows this before they even go there, which means he's done his homework. He's picked up the trigger very early. So that's the middle player, and you'll see Sous in the middle there. And right there, he starts going back before the front lifter actually goes back. So he's read that before they've gone into that position, stops right in front of them, and he can probably catch that with two hands, but he doesn't, and he gets the ball. And again, I'm telling you, this is a clever rugby player, and what I've seen with this clip is that he does his homework, picks up the right cues. He's probably looked at the front jumper, seen there's nothing going on there, moves back before their front lifter goes, stays just in front of them, and then steals that ball. You can't argue, Harry. That's impressive. And that's something that I probably wouldn't have spoken about if I didn't see clips like this.
I hadn't thought about it till right now, but it's almost that unites the thing that we do know about him and everyone thinks about him, which he's a great ruck man. Rucking is about reading bodies as well, but reading bodies in a second. And what your clip shows here is he read someone's body in a second at the lineout, and he immediately went to the spot. Brilliant.
And I love the fact that he doesn't go, because a lot of locks make the mistake. They go back too far, and then they give that lock an opportunity to get the ball. He stays right on the back heel of their front lifter, which means that their jumper cannot get to that ball. So let's get into his tackling. What's impressive of Sous with his tackling is that there's more often than not, there's post-tackle involvement. So we've spoken about this many times on this series, is forward lean and punch. He's got that forward lean into the tackle, he's punching, and then getting into position. Now, that's probably around the neck. You know, luckily the Japanese refs miss a couple of things. But what's impressive here is the fact that it's that Ibn Etzebet mindset where I don't care how I've got you, but I'm taking you to where you came from. And he keeps driving him back, and you'll see his legs. Just have a look at his legs once he gets into the ground. Now, a lot of guys would then probably get up, get out, get into line, but not Franco. Have a look at his legs there. Look how it keeps going there. And they've got to put more numbers in there because he's on that. And then just on the outside, probably quick ball for the Dynabors on this one. There's defense not set at all. He gets a good, strong position, and this is what he does well, Harry. He gets what we call a power finish. So he finishes on top with his backside square to his try line, which means that he then can either, let's call it jackal or bully into that space, and then he gets into that jackal position. But that finish there is something you'll see Franco ensure that he gets. And the only way you do that is by staying in front and not getting side on or getting kind of whiplashed around, landing on their side, and then, like the teams do these days, getting trapped on their side. That finish there.
There's a lot of talk about meters post contact, the yak, yards after contact. I would say Franco may be one of the best at denying that. I feel like when he gets his hands on you, you're not getting any extra yards.
I'd hate to run into a double tackle with him and Ibn Etzebet together. That would be, you're probably going to land up in the parking lot in an old Corolla's boot. So I think that's the worst case scenario for you. But that finish there, and once you start seeing these pictures, when you watch him play, have a look at how he ensures he finishes like that, because that ensures post-tackle involvement. Next clip, no different. Again, see how he stays in front? Look at that finish. He ensures, even if he gives away a couple of centimeters, because he stays in front, he can go from there and he can keep those ruckers busy, ensuring that they spend energy on getting rid of him. Attacking breakdown time. Now, he's on his way around. He's probably going to be on the outside of the ball carrier. Like I said, he doesn't like to put himself into ball carry positions unless he's running off go forward ball and he sees a hole. But he'd rather have someone else carry and hitting rucks. And this is no different. So there's big space between him. The carrier decides to go very narrow. Have a look at the force that Franco hits this with. And he moves the ruck. You know that the locks we speak about where we say they move a ruck? Well, this is it. That's a player right over the ball, and he gets rid of him. It's not an easy thing to do, especially if the player's already stuck to the ball on the jackal. Again, ball, and on this one, you can see that the ball carrier's got an opportunity to stay on his feet. So what he does is he latches really early. So the awareness, and I come back to my first statement. He's not just a guy who shows a lot of impact and physicality. He's a clever rugby player. He's a very smart rugby player. And he impresses me with all the clips that I've seen. He impresses me more and more. Gets on the latch. And even though there's a guy tackling him on the back, see how he just keeps going, stays on his feet and fighting for any extra yardage that he can get. Same thing. He's probably waiting for the carry. I think someone cut Modi's lawn on this one. They cut his grass. He was supposed to carry on this one. Didn't get it. Outside cleaner. Let's call him the blast again. Outside cleaner. Have a look at how he gets shoulder on, cleans him off it, ball available, and they can play. Now, what's different between this and the previous one? You'll see that the ball carrier has pretty much lost his feet there. I don't know if you can see that, Harry.
Yeah.
He's pretty much lost his feet there. Franco's made the ID very early. It's no use for me going onto the latch. Otherwise, we're both going back down to the ground. I'm going to hit the outside jackler and ensure that there's no pressure from the outside. And he gets rid of him. And this is just one from the inside. Again, he gets hold of Skuman there. But why I circled that, Harry, is he loses his feet. And a lot of players there would just lie on top of the ruck. You've done your job. You're probably going to keep the ball. Have a look at how he gets back onto that right foot and then keeps driving. And it's an extra meter. Make an extra meter, get the ball from there. And then last one is probably call it a bit of damage control. See how he stays in front, like we spoke about earlier, and then manages to fight off the jackler and contester all by himself. So if we take this from the start, there's a little pop pass. He stays in front and then stays on top, doesn't get moved, and he does that all by himself. He's an attacking breakdown wizard. I'm convinced of that now.
Sous has always been the guy that I thought of as a Gees guy, spirit guy, hair on fire guy. In doing this and also working with you and watching these clips, he impresses me as a leverage guy, as a guy who knows how to find the shortcuts. He uses all he's got, punches above his weight. Being at these games and watching the locks gather, and you look at him up against Archie, Eben, and those guys, he's smaller he's a flat belly. There's no boop. There's no ballast for him to use when he crashes into the rock. That's desire, but also I really agree with you. It's about angles. It's about applied knowledge. He's been doing it so long that he can adjust in a half second. So well done, Mostert. It's one of those guys. He's an unsung hero. He's not going to go down in the books as one of the greats of the golden era of the Springbok team. And yet probably his teammates will look at him as one of the greats because he makes their life a lot easier.
Harry, sorry, you're 100% right. We need to show this clip. I went and found it quickly while you were talking. So this was the clips we showed of Siya Kolisi and what they did on creating this opportunity. And like I said, Sous will come in running into that line.
Sweet.
And that identification is just unbelievable. The way he runs into that hole, that's a great try.
Untouched.
So,
but it looks surprised and almost apologetic.
I love the fact that he stays so upright when he's running, and it always looks like there's 15 people chasing him and they're right on their heels.
Awesome. For me, I'll do the scores and then I'll give you closing thoughts on Sous. But to me, I hadn't thought about just not promoting himself to carry, but as a choice, because he knows what his role is and he focuses on it. So 29 out of 30 for ruck efficiency. There's no one I would actually grade at 30 out of 30. It's impossible. So that's as high a score as you can get. 29 out of 30. Set piece, 55 out of 60, probably just because there's a certain height and weight reality that's it's hard to get around. And then finally on the gain line carry and tackle effect, 7. So that's a 91 for a guy who's not looked at as a starter if everyone is healthy. That's amazing. It's the golden era of locks, because if you look at the locks we've covered so far, there's no country on earth that can go as deep into lockland and still find this kind of quality. So Sous at 91, just 1 point below Lood on our rankings. Closing thoughts on Mostert?
Don't forget, he's an option at 7 as well. And he showed that time and time again. And he's looked very comfortable at 7, not ball carrying wise. Although, we say he doesn't carry. I think it's probably whatever's best at the moment. And whoever's playing with him. If he's playing, I think like with Honda, he carries a lot because he's one of the better carriers. But if Pablo Matera's coming around the corner, Sosa's going to go underneath, and he's probably going to be his blast outside cleaner. But I need to state the fact again. He's a smart rugby player. He is a very, very smart rugby player.
Yeah, he strikes me as someone, if he will agree to talk, that he could be a coach. He just one of those guys. I love coaches who didn't have athletic supremacy and yet were top of the game, because that shows that they worked out stuff. They made plans. They accounted for deficiencies. They knew who they were. They can work with players. It's kind of difficult sometimes when you can do everything really easily and then you're trying to coach someone and they're like, so how do I do it? You don't just run around them. You have to think of things. Our next player that we're going to look at is actually very similar in some ways, because he plays as a 7 for the Bulls. And you could see him going on to be a 7. But he's absolutely a line-out caller. He's absolutely a captain mentality. And he's shaped a bit like Mostert as well, in that he's not a gigantic man width-wise. So now we're talking about Ruan Nortjé, who was, I think, one of the finds of post-World Cup Bok land. He's one of those guys that it wasn't obvious. He was not on everyone's list. He wasn't a Sasha next big thing, a Hanekom obvious, star. He seemed like a guy that was a bit of a pop-up. And so, let's take a look at him. And what are you thinking about him? Do you think ultimately he stays at Lock 5, or do you think he moves across maybe as a successor to Pieter-Steph du Toit?
That's a good question. And again, like I said, I feel I love the Springbok so much, and I love the Springbok players so much, that when I put some criticism in, I hope it's seen as constructive. And for him to move to 7, he's got to ante up his ball carrying aggressiveness. It's very much to the point of Salman Murat. It's when Ruan gets a ball, he can look after it, but he's not gonna cause a lot of damage, does it feel to me? You're gonna get your ball back, but it's probably, if it's a good line speed defense, it's probably gonna be behind the advantage line. He's got a very effective leg chop technique. He's physical, but he can get into trouble because he drops that knee. We'll go through the clips now. We'll show that. So I think for him to go to a 7 and be a world-class 7, he's got to up the level of his ball carries, either putting in a bit of evasion, ball showing, because he tucks immediately, he shows, so the double hits are going to come to him as early as possible. He's got no show of the ball, which means that there's no one defender moving away from him. And his evasion, the first clip you'll see of his carry, you'll see him stepping onto the inside. It's probably his best carry on the clips. The rest of it is, tucking early, closing up, but then going to ground really quickly. And on the last clip, you'll see him getting into trouble. We get the ball back. And there was a clip against Glasgow, which I didn't put on, where they actually lost the ball. Just going to ground too quickly. And I think he's got the ability to do that. But, still, he's 26. There's so much to be done to his game, and I think he'll definitely improve with that. All right, just like with the other two, we'll have a look at the lineouts. Harry, I want you to focus on the speed of delivery and the softness of hands when it comes to Nortjé's delivery. So he gets up. It doesn't even look like the ball's touching his hands. Sia with a great carry there. Again, this is probably a better angle. Look how quickly that ball's out of his hands.
Mm-hmm. One motion.
And you kind of take it for granted, but remember, there's so many things that, look how close the All Blacks actually get to that ball. There's so many things that have to happen before you jump, before you catch that, and then get that quick delivery, and we can get into that. And then on the contesting, he gets up in the air. It doesn't matter if the support runner or the supporter is late, like on this one, works himself in front. He understands contesting. He knows as a line-out jumper what you don't want, and he can get in there. So line-out play, absolutely no problem for Nortjé. I think there's a couple of tricks of the trade that he'll learn as he goes along, but he's a great line-out jumper and delivery. So this was the carry I was talking about, working himself around. Have a look at him stepping off the right and getting over the advantage line. Good reaction catch, stepping into space, and ball available. Now, if we compare that to the rest of the clips, where you'll see, so he's got ball in two hands. I'd love to see a little show to France there. Tucks, ball in the right arm, no problem. But that position there, he's going down immediately, which means that the jackler doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to touch him to get rights to that ball. Luckily, you got the boys looking after him.
It makes Ox and France have to come clean.
And I just think if Sevilla had kept his feet there, so he falls over. If he kept his feet there, France would have been really late. So there's the jackal position. That's the situation he would have been in. Just purely for the fact that he didn't stay on his feet. Now, last week I showed you a clip of Arge and a couple of the other locks that use this where they hit him with a hip, not with a shoulder. If you're hitting him with a shoulder, it's kind of like when you scrum and your shoulders go below your hips. They hit him with a hip here. They use the defender to keep them upright. But because he's hitting him with the shoulder, he goes down. And Sevilla doesn't do well here, but that's the situation he would have been in. Does this make sense, Harry?
Yeah, it's the numbers game then too. So in the chess game of the D-line, A-line, now you've taken away two of your options and you've given the defense an advantage because they've got more people on their feet.
Exactly. Quick ball, immediately down, and you can pick this up from him. I think he's an absolute workhorse, but he can stay on his feet, up on his feet a bit more. And this is the clip I'm talking about. So Eben decides to play the little tip, which is good, and then from there he goes down immediately. Luckily, both defenders have lost their feet, which gives Van Staden and Ox an opportunity to get to that ball. And that's the one thing I think for him to become a world-class 7, which if that's the position that they see him at, he's got to become a world-class ball carrier first. Right? The ball out the back is also, I would say, not as good as we saw last week from Harry. See the space between him and the defender, which means that they get to move off very quickly. We decide to kick this, but if you think about what we saw last week, Harry was in motion when he caught the ball, and he gave this ball when he got into the lion's mouth, and then from there, it went out the back.
Yeah,
And
it's also,
then
Andre, it's also telegraphed. I mean, it's obvious what he's doing from even before he catches it.
Yeah, he doesn't even change feet. Yeah, he shuffles. And he's got a good skill set. I think he can go a lot further into the lion's mouth and get Kwagga to run that little power line. I mean, you've got to put people onto Kwagga. You can't leave him. Once he gets a weak shoulder, he's going to stay on his feet, and you're probably going to have to add 2 more defenders to that. So you want to close that front door and look at it first. So it's just a bit too far away. So that skill, again, I think you'll get better. Sit and have a coffee with Harry. Go through Harry's clips with Harry and ask him, you know, the Irish have done this. They've perfected that art of the forward running into the mouth and getting the ball back to the backs. On his tackling, so this is a kick chase tackle. So you'll see him, he gets into a bit of a reach, but a solid leg chop. Gets onto that one leg. He looks like the expert on getting that one leg and ensuring he makes the tackle. Again, in phase, out the back, that's where Ruan is. So on this one, very far away, launches. So what this means is that if you launch far away, you've got 1 bullet. If you miss him, he's gone. Your feet's not going to come with you.
Yeah.
And again, he gets onto that one leg, makes the tackle. And Harry, that's the thing with Ruan. He gives you this work rate. Have a look at his bounce afterwards. As he hits the ground, gets onto one leg. As he hits the ground, he's up, same side, back into the defense. He's also not scared to have a go on the Jackals. Back in there. What I would like to see, though, is once he makes contact, I'd love to see those feet go back and, you know, kind of give him an opportunity to survive that cling. I think he's a lot stronger than he thinks he is. He can survive this clean if he puts himself into a better position. So this is the part that I wanted to chat about when it comes to Nortjé in terms of his defense. He can get into very good positions. Just like that, body in front, very effective. The problem is, once he gets onto that knee, it can be a problem. In this part, I think he got body in front, he got that left foot to stick behind him, and it wasn't a problem. This is where it becomes a problem. Gets on that, loses his footing, so you got Peter Steff on the right side working with him, and then from there, you've got no pillars behind you, Harry. And he gets pummeled over. And because he's such a good leg chopper, I think he just needs to keep that leg off the ground for a second longer, just to give him an opportunity to have a second go and a second shove. And this is, like I said, nitpicking, you know, what can he do better? At least he gets low, he gets body in front. He's an effective tackler. I think that, again, have a look at how he gets into position, immediately working for that position. So, you know, there's so much effectivity from Nortjé, but I think the ceiling hasn't been touched. It hasn't even been seen when it comes to him. I think if we have this session in 4 years from now, we're probably going to see him as the standard, and we're going to have people fighting to get his jersey.
Yeah, he's a young man who's obviously been well coached and well coached early in his career. So the technique and the positions are all good. There's a bit of a dilemma with him, which is to do some of the things that you said he should do better. And I think that's clear. He'd have to gain some mass, some kgs, but then would that cut away from one of his greatest assets right now, which is his speed to the ruck, his happiness to do everything, jackal, tackle, clean. He's kind of sign me up, do it, coach. I'm there. As he's signing checks, his body cannot cash basically. And so I think, yeah, he's young, so his body's going to change. And so I wonder about what that looks like when he adds 5 kgs. That might answer the question about whether he goes to 7 or not. I know that Pieter-Steph du Toit talks about how he had to change his body to go from lock to 7. And so we'll see what he does next. I took a look at everything I could. I think some of the clips you've just shown us are even more demonstrative about some of the issues. But he strikes me as a guy who's really good at set piece. I mean, his lineout work is impeccable.
Yeah.
To be able to call lineouts against the All Blacks at that age, when it was all on the line, with the incredible deafening roar of Ellis Park and then Cape Town, with everything on the all the chips on the table, that's saying something. And it's all around the ruck and then some tweaks on the carry and the tackle. So going across the scores here, we have 58 out of 60 for set piece, which is actually the best in class. Ruck efficiency 26, so work-ons there. And then in the carry, tackle, gain line, contact zone, same as Mostert actually, and they kind of have similar body shapes, to be fair. So that's a 91, kind of surprised me. I'm looking at it now, I'm wondering maybe what we're saying is Mostert at this point in his career, tapering off at 91, Nortjé at this point in his career going up. They're kind of meeting right now at 91, because I think peak Mostert might have been higher. So you have 92 for Lood, 91 for Sous, and 91 for Ruan. What do you think about the idea of this sort of golden age of locks? I'm almost staggered, the guys we've gone through so far, and we'll do our dark horse next. But Lood, Eben, Franco, Archie. I mean, it's just bizarre how good they are as a cohort. I mean, would we see the like of them again?
It's a good point you make. And I mean, if you think of if you look at the marks that you've just said, I think you need to put into perspective the fact that there's a set piece specialist, which is Nortjé, and then you've got an attacking breakdown specialist, world-class specialist, and you've given them percentages, and yet they still come out at 91.
Exactly.
Which just shows they're Springboks. They're world-class players, and it shows that the system works. So no, I'd love to do this in 4 years, maybe even 2 years from now, and see the difference in Nortjé and just how he's going to evolve his game. Because the thing is, Harry, if you're going to stay the same, you're going to get left behind, especially in this position. Their responsibility has become so much bigger than just lineouts. And if you're going to stay the same, you're going to get left behind. And I think I look at him and I see a player that, like you said, what do I need to do next, coach? You need to tell him, let's get an outside step going. Let's get an outside step with an inside hand fend. Let's get an outside step, inside hand fend, outside hand offload. Let's start working. Let's go to progressions, showing the visuals. And they're doing this. I know this is nothing new, but they're doing this, and he's going to be a different player in probably a year from now. And he's gonna have coffee with Archie, and he's gonna offload like Archie. He's gonna clean rucks like Sous, and he's gonna play like Ruan Nortjé, and that's a great hybrid to have.
Yeah, we're also talking about, that's a great point, about interchangeability and the different looks you have, because they play now, the Bok locks play now within the context of 7-1 or 6-2. So you often have a situation where there's 5 locks, if you count Pieter-Steph as a sort of lock, and you have this interchangeability. So it's not a weakness, it's a strength that you would have a ruck monster and a set piece guy. Because one thing about rugby is, in the end, in the minute 78 or 79, you still got to do a scrum or a line out to close out the match. It's not like another sport where sort of the time just runs out and that's it. You have to complete your set piece.
Yep.
And All Blacks had to do it in Cape Town, couldn't do it. Line out steal. But Nortjé does the kick out to end the match. So yeah, it's fantastic.
I didn't put his kicking stuff in there, so that's probably giving him enough.
You never, hardly ever as a lock do you get to do that. I think the fend is where it's all at. I think if you have the longest arms on the pitch, you get the ball in space, sort of semi-space sometimes as a lock carrier. Learning the fend like Ibben's got, like Pieter-Steph's got, it gives you it gives you a free meter or two. And so I would say for Ruan, yes, I understand the ball in two hands thing, but there's a lot of moments where you can just shove your guy, hello, meet my father, palm in the perfect space. You don't get, pinged for it, and you clear out and you can do the offload next. But we can talk about who we've named so far for a long time. The fact of the matter is, on the 8 locks that was nominated by Nrasi for the squad, we've got the 7 of them. John Klein is the guy we didn't put in, the Munsterman, the guy that's sort of been shipped in, parachuted in for World Cup 2023, does a job, leaves, and is done. Is another unsung hero. I've got a soft spot, so we've included as a dark horse, probably a favorite to me. Sorry, everyone. Ruben van Heerden from the Stormers. I've gone through everything to try and convince myself I'm not just looking at this with home eyes, but the Ruben has completed the most tackles at the highest percentage. So if you take highest percentages out of 51 club teams in the world, ranked by Opta, and then you look across, if you've got at least 150 tackles, what's your highest percentage? It's Ruben. He's a guy that doesn't miss tackles. Number 2, he doesn't get hurt, or if he does get hurt, he gets well quickly, which is a sort of a John Klein, prerequisite too. He was brought in case there were other injuries to other locks, and indeed there almost always is. 3rd, the line-out calling. The Stormers had a terrible year when it's all said and done in terms of wasted opportunities. But one thing that wasn't bad was their line-out. 90%, one of the top in the IRC, top 10 in the world out of 51 teams. And that's with a dodgy hooker. I'll just put it out there, throwing some dodgy balls. Carry, absolutely a willing carrier. So I look at Ruben as a dark horse that's still dark. He hasn't been brought into the light. He hasn't been named in the squad. I don't know what he did wrong. I don't know who he asked out, but 57 out of set piece for me at the line out. 25, so that's the work on at ruck to not get pinged as much. And then 7 on the carry for 89. I just think there's something there. It could be worked on, and it would be a shame to me that he goes his career without being named as a Bok.
It's a good point, Harry. I don't think it's just homely eyes. There are work-ons, and obviously they know how they want to play and why a player like Ruben is not part of the system.
That's fair. Yeah.
They'll know. We'd love to know, because obviously we think he's got some potential. I think when it comes to ruck efficiency, plain landing versus plain taking off. If you talk about refs, looking at and again, it's just being early enough to be legal enough.
Yep.
If you're late, you have to make certain compromises, and those compromises tend to lead to mistakes and penalties and cards. So that's the one thing. And on the carries, I would say, if a 125 kg guy like Lood can start moving his body the way he does, I'm pretty sure Ruben can. getting into space, showing ball. It's small skills. It's such small skills. You know, just a show of the ball takes away the double hit. You know, going into the mouth and then playing the ball at the back gives your pivot at the back an extra yard or two to make a great decision. So it's those small little things. And that's how you become a Springbok. That's why you become a Springbok. And then you still got to improve from there. You know, the great Springboks that we all know are the guys that became Springboks and got even better. And that's what you want to go at. So, you know, Ruben at the moment is lingering and sitting between the Stormers and the Bok jersey. You know, what's he going to do to get that? But also, what is he going to do when he gets a Bok jersey? How can he improve from there? And that's how the great Springboks are born.
Absolutely. And so we wish him the best. And all these guys on our list are fascinating studies in and of their own. So what MVA and the great studios of Megaphone and Lekker Rugby Pod have decided to do to help you out is we're going to go player by player. There's going to be player profiles. So releasing on the channel, there's going to be going back to fullback and center and scrum off. We're going to go sort of player by player. So you can take a look at some of these. Listen, it's a debate. You know, we're not claiming to have infinite wisdom, but we have done a rigorous methodology here that I think holds up in the sense that we are doing the same thing with each one, taking the time to analyze it and trying to divorce ourselves from any home prejudices, but they're always there sometimes. So definitely try to log on. Andre, another tour de force. I thought that your clips, you know, as we've gone on, it's difficult. It's difficult because you want to find something that exemplifies the player, and you don't just take one thing, cherry picking. I thought those were dynamic. And what a thrill for me to go to see Lood in action. I haven't seen a lot of the Japanese action, so thanks a lot for showing one of the great men of South African rugby in his prime.
I saw him a couple of weeks ago. We came back from one of our matches, and Panasonic had just played Yamaha. They were on the same platform as us, waiting for a Shinkansen. And I saw him, and I'm pretty sure Lood got taller. I don't know if I'm wrong, but I just want to put it out there for World Rugby and for everybody playing against the Springboks. I'm pretty sure Lood got taller.
Interesting. I always think it's about his hair and how much hair he's got going on. He has caveman hair if he wants it, and he can also go real short, and it makes him look taller.
Yeah, true.
Cheers, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Harry.
Our ultimate 2025 Springbok team every Sunday with Andre Pretorius.